Welcome back, debate champions! Today, we're finally settling the generational war with 21 reasons why Gen Z is better than Millennials. So put down your avocado toast and silence your notifications from the Office fan page. It's time for the digital natives to officially take the crown from the digital tourists. Gen Z are true digital natives, while Millennials are just digital tourists. Let's be clear, Millennials remember dial-up tones and the agonizing choice of who got to be in their MySpace top 8. They learned the internet. For Gen Z, the internet isn't a tool, it's the air they breathe. They didn't have to adapt to social media, they were born into its chaotic, algorithmic embrace. While a Millennial carefully crafts a caption, a Gen Z has already created a multi-layered video meme, managed a Discord server, and diagnosed a faulty Wi-Fi router just by looking at it. Millennials visit the digital world with a fanny pack and a map, taking awkward selfies. Gen Z built the city, they run the city, and they can't understand why these tourists keep asking for directions to Facebook. Their meme game and surreal humor are light years beyond millennial adulting jokes. The pinnacle of millennial comedy is a tweet saying, "I can't adult today," paired with a gif from The Office. It's predictable, self-deprecating, and frankly, a bit whiny. Gen Z, on the other hand, operates on a level of comedic abstraction that millennials can't even process. Their humor is a chaotic, multi-layered tapestry of deep-fried images, nonsensical audio clips, and inside jokes that become obsolete in 48 hours. While a millennial is still chuckling at a meme about needing wine, Gen Z has created an entire cinematic universe based on a distorted picture of a capybara. Their humor isn't just a coping mechanism for life's struggles, it's a creative, surrealist art form that requires a PhD in internet culture to fully appreciate. All right, pause the debate. We've laid out the facts, but now we want your fire. Drop your most savage, undeniable reason why Gen Z reigns supreme in the comments below. We're reading every single one, and the absolute best clapbacks will be immortalized in a future Users Edition. Don't hold back. Gen Z demands authenticity, killing the fake, curated Instagram aesthetic Millennials built. Millennials painstakingly crafted the era of the perfect digital facade. Their feeds became a bland sea of avocado toast art, staged candid laughter, and inspirational quotes plastered over stock photos of mountains. It was a performance of unattainable perfection, a highlight reel that ignored the messy reality of life. Then Gen Z arrived and burned that entire playbook to the ground. They traded the flawless influencer squat for the chaotic photo dump. They chose blurry, unflattering 0.5x selfies over golden hour portraits. They understand that connection comes from vulnerability, not curation. While millennials were busy asking, "Does this look good for my brand?" Gen Z was asking, "Is this real?" Their demand for authenticity single-handedly killed a decade of digital fakeness. They weaponized TikTok to change culture. Millennials just learned the dances late. Millennials approach TikTok with the same energy they bring to a new IKEA catalog, mild curiosity, followed by confused frustration. They saw an app for silly dances and spent months trying to master the renegade long after it was cool. But Gen Z saw the platform for what it truly was, a powerful engine for cultural and political change. While millennials were posting cringe-worthy lip syncs, Gen Z was using the algorithm to organize protests, spread vital information faster than legacy media, and tank political rallies by reserving thousands of seats with no intention of showing up. They turned a simple video app into a guerrilla communication network. The generational gap isn't just about dance moves, it's about seeing a toy versus seeing a weapon. Gen Z's activism creates actual change, not just performative hashtags. The Millennial Activist Starter Pack includes a clever hashtag, a temporary profile picture frame, and the self-satisfied feeling of having raised awareness. They mastered the art of the black Instagram square, believing a silent grid was a revolutionary act. Gen Z finds this laughable. They don't just tweet about injustice, they organize school walkouts that shut down cities, flood political town halls with unanswerable questions, and use their digital fluency to dismantle corporate lies in real time. While millennials posted non-thoughts and prayers, Gen Z was coding websites to track politicians' voting records. For millennials, activism was often a personal brand accessory. For Gen Z, it's a verb, a relentless, unapologetic demand for systemic change, executed with military precision on a Discord server. They understand financial markets and crypto better than millennials understand their own student debt. Millennials stare at their student loan statements with a mix of existential dread and genuine confusion, unable to explain concepts like capitalized interest, but painfully aware of its consequences. Their financial literacy peaked with a dusty pamphlet on budgeting. Gen Z, on the other hand, learned about decentralized finance from Discord servers and got investment advice from TikTok. They can explain blockchain, debate the utility of different altcoins, and spot a potential rug pull while a millennial is still on hold with their loan servicer. While the older generation was trying to figure out what a 401k was, Gen Z was coordinating a global short squeeze on meme stocks from their bedrooms. They aren't just participating in the economy, they're beta testing its volatile, chaotic future. Gen Z canceled the side part and skinny jeans, saving us all from a decade of bad taste. For a solid decade, millennials walked around in a uniform of circulation-cutting denim and hair aggressively swept to one side, convinced it was the peak of style. It was a fashion purgatory defined by painted-on pants that made sitting a challenge and a hairstyle that gave everyone an unintentional dramatic swoosh. Then Gen Z logged on and declared, with the brutal efficiency of a courtroom verdict, that the tyranny was over. They didn't just suggest a change, they enforced a cultural reset. The middle part, with its unflinching symmetry, took its rightful throne, while comfortable, expressive jeans replaced the skinny jean prison. This wasn't just a fashion trend, it was an act of aesthetic mercy, a mass liberation from a deeply cringeworthy era. They refused to worship the hustle culture that led to millennial burnout. Millennials were brainwashed by the gospel of rise and grind. They collected side hustles like Pokemon cards and wore sleep deprivation as a badge of honor, all in the desperate hope that their corporate overlords might notice their suffering and reward them with a pizza party. The result? A generation of burnt-out, anxiety-ridden adults who romanticized their own exploitation. Gen Z looked at this tragic scene, scoffed, and said, "No thanks." They championed concepts like quiet quitting and acting your wage, prioritizing mental health and work-life balance over performative productivity. They understand that a job is a transaction, not a family, and that their value as a human being isn't defined by their willingness to answer emails at 11 p.m. Gen Z's understanding of inclusivity and identity is fundamentally more evolved. Millennials fought for tolerance, which, bless their hearts, was a noble goal for its time. But it was often a surface-level approach, focused on polite acceptance. Gen Z blew past tolerance and went straight to celebration and integration. For them, inclusivity isn't a special edition HR seminar, it's the default setting. They intuitively grasped the complexities of intersectionality, pronouns, and the vast spectrum of human identity in a way that often leaves millennials struggling to keep up with the vocabulary. While a millennial might proudly state they don't see color, a Gen Z is already deconstructing the systemic issues that make such a statement problematic. They aren't just inviting people to the party, they're redesigning the entire house so everyone belongs from the start. They build business empires from their bedrooms instead of complaining about the job market. Millennials entered a tough job market and created an entire genre of content about how hard it was to find a job, pay for avocado toast, and deal with boomer bosses. They blogged, they vlogged, they whined. Gen Z faced an even more chaotic economic landscape, shrugged, and became the CEOs of their own lives. They don't just apply for jobs, they create them. They monetize their hobbies, build global audiences on TikTok and Twitch, and launch dropshipping empires between online classes. While a millennial was polishing a resume to impress a hiring manager, a 17-year-old in their basement was analyzing their own e-commerce analytics and negotiating a brand deal. They simply bypassed the broken system that frustrated millennials and built their own. Gen Z's pragmatic realism is a necessary antidote to millennial optimism. Millennials were raised on a diet of you can be anything you want to be and participation trophies. This fostered a brand of earnest, often naive optimism that crashed hard against the realities of economic collapse and institutional decay. They held on to the belief that if they just worked hard enough, the system would eventually reward them. Gen Z has no such illusions. They were born into a world of visible chaos, climate anxiety, and political polarization. Their worldview is not pessimistic, it's brutally realistic. They see the systems for what they are, flawed and often rigged, and operate accordingly. This pragmatism makes them more resilient, more innovative, and far less likely to be disappointed when the world doesn't hand them a gold star. They normalized conversations about mental health, a topic millennials whispered about. For millennials, discussing mental health was a private, often shameful affair, something you might cautiously bring up with a very close friend after 3 glasses of wine. Therapy was stigmatized, and anxiety was something you just powered through with caffeine and dark humor. Gen Z smashed that entire paradigm. They talk about therapy, medication, neurodivergence, and trauma with the same casual openness they discuss their favorite shows. They create viral TikToks that destigmatize panic attacks and share mental health resources in Discord channels. While millennials treated their mental well-being like a dirty secret, Gen Z treats it like any other aspect of their health. Something to be monitored, managed, and discussed openly and without shame. They made it okay to not be okay. Gen Z's fluid, DIY fashion sense makes millennial brand obsession look dated. Millennials came of age in an era where your status was defined by the logo on your shirt. Abercrombie, Hollister, Coach. It was a contest of conspicuous consumption. Their style was dictated by whatever was stocked in the mall, leading to a predictable uniformity. Gen Z treats fashion completely differently. It's a fluid, personal, and endlessly creative form of self-expression. They thrift, they upcycle, they blend aesthetics from micro-trends like cottagecore and dark academia, and they aren't afraid to look weird. For them, a unique self-made outfit from a thrift store holds more cultural cachet than an expensive, logo-stamped hoodie. They killed the idea that you have to buy your identity from a brand, proving that true style comes from creativity, not a credit card. They hold brands accountable for their ethics, not just their aesthetics. Millennials were the first generation to care if a brand had a story, but their standards were often paper thin. A company could slap a rainbow logo on their product in June or make a vague promise of sustainability, and millennials would feel good about their purchase. Gen Z's corporate BS detector is far more advanced. They don't just look at the marketing campaign, they dig into the supply chain. They demand to know a brand's labor practices, their environmental impact, their political donations, and the diversity of their board. They will organize a mass boycott over a single tone-deaf tweet and can sniff out performative greenwashing from a mile away. For Gen Z, a purchase is a vote, and they refuse to cast it for unethical players. Gen Z learns any skill on YouTube in an hour, rendering millennial degrees obsolete. Millennials dutifully followed the prescribed path, go into crippling debt for a 4-year degree that might, if they were lucky, be vaguely related to their future career. Their knowledge became outdated the second they graduated. Gen Z sees this model as laughably inefficient. Why spend a semester learning about marketing theory when you can watch a 45-minute deep dive from an actual industry expert on YouTube? They can learn to code, edit a feature film, day trade stocks, or master a new language using free, readily available online resources. They acquire practical, in-demand skills on an as-needed basis, making them more adaptable and versatile than the generation still paying off a philosophy degree. They value demonstrated skill over a framed piece of paper. Their communication is faster, more visual, and more efficient. A millennial will write a 5-paragraph email, complete with a formal salutation and closing, to convey a single piece of information. They'll then follow up with a text asking, "Did you see my email?" Gen Z has evolved beyond this bloated, time-wasting form of communication. They can convey more emotion, nuance, and context with a specific combination of 3 emojis than a millennial can in 100 words. A TikTok stitch, a well-timed GIF, a screenshot with a chaotic doodle on it. This is their language. It's a rapid-fire visual shorthand that prioritizes speed and impact over the performative formalities of the past. They don't have time for your lengthy email. The message has already been sent, received, and understood via a single, perfectly chosen sticker. Gen Z isn't waiting for permission to take power. They're already taking it. Millennials were taught to wait their turn. They were told to pay their dues, climb the corporate ladder, and politely ask for a seat at the table, a seat that rarely materialized. They waited for boomers to retire and for institutions to finally recognize their worth. Gen Z finds this strategy utterly passive and ineffective. They aren't asking for permission or waiting for an invitation. They are building their own tables, they are creating new media companies, launching political movements, and designing the platforms that will define the future. They see the gatekeepers not as figures to be appeased, but as relics to be bypassed. While millennials are still waiting in the lobby, Gen Z has already hacked the mainframe and redesigned the whole building. They have a built-in cringe detector that sees right through corporate pandering. Corporations spent years learning how to speak millennial, which usually meant adding the word adulting to a tweet or making a reference to friends. Just as they thought they'd cracked the code, Gen Z showed up with a hypersensitive cringe detector that renders all such efforts futile. They can spot an out-of-touch brand trying to use a dead meme from 3 weeks ago with surgical precision. Their deep-seated irony and awareness of the absurd makes them virtually immune to traditional advertising. Any attempt by a brand to sound authentic or relatable is immediately identified, screenshotted, and mercilessly roasted into oblivion. They don't just dislike ads, they treat clumsy corporate attempts to co-opt their culture as a personal insult. Gen Z's taste in music is more diverse, global, and genre-defying. Millennials grew up in the last era of musical gatekeeping, their tastes largely shaped by MTV, radio stations, and whatever Pitchfork deemed cool. Their playlists are often a nostalgic time capsule of 2000s indie rock and pop punk. Gen Z's musical landscape, however, is a borderless, algorithm-driven universe. They'll transition seamlessly from a hyperpop track to a 19th century sea shanty that went viral on TikTok, then to a K-pop supergroup and an obscure ambient artist from Eastern Europe. Genre is a fluid suggestion, not a rigid boundary. Their exposure to global sounds isn't a niche interest, it's the default setting. While millennials argue about whether a band is emo or post-hardcore, Gen Z is vibing to a playlist that makes no logical sense but feels entirely right. They view gender and sexuality with a nuance millennials are still struggling to grasp. Millennials fought bravely for marriage equality, establishing a foundational understanding of LGBTQ+ rights. But their framework often stopped at fixed labels: gay, straight, bi, treating identity like a permanent selection from a drop-down menu. Gen Z sees that as ancient history. They operate with a native understanding that gender and sexuality are fluid, multifaceted spectrums. The concept isn't a lesson they had to learn, it's an intuitive part of their social grammar. While a millennial might make a big, performative show of asking for pronouns, a Gen Z has already clocked them, used them correctly, and moved on. They aren't just accepting of nuance. They are the generation that normalized it, rendering the old binary system as obsolete as a flip phone. Gen Z is building the future. Millennials are just trying to keep their houseplants alive. The ultimate millennial achievement is a thriving fiddle leaf fig. It's the masterpiece of their domestic era, a living symbol of their retreat into manageable aesthetic anxieties. They perfected the art of nesting, turning their apartments into cozy jungles to distract from the crumbling world outside. Gen Z, meanwhile, is fundamentally uninterested in potting soil. They are busy prototyping decentralized social networks, coding climate solutions, and organizing global movements from their phones. Their focus isn't on creating the perfect indoor oasis, it's on ensuring there's a habitable planet to live on. While a millennial's biggest existential crisis might be overwatering their succulent, Gen Z is tackling the root rot of society itself. One is keeping a plant alive, the other is building the future. And that's the final verdict. Thanks for watching the Generational Takedown. If you've recovered and have your own arguments, drop them in the comments. We want to see them. Hit that subscribe button so you're ready for our next debate. 21 Reasons Why. Epic debates, legendary comments.